So on our last day in Bailakupe, we went to meet with Sakong Rinpoche and Kadrola, and what really struck me was how both of them talked about how His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the Buddha of our time, and just how he's done so much to bring Buddhism into a dialogue with the 21st century in ways that are relevant to the world. So I've been thinking just about that, just how he's the perfect Buddha of our time, really appreciating how he's created these Mind and Life conferences, which also formed the backdrop of the Lamrim teachings. I think there were many conversations on the side. Venerable was checking in with many different people because the conference had just ended before the Lamrim teachings. So just hearing about the research and the thinking, but always very wary about whether we need science to prove the validity of Buddhism. That's really not the point, but that the dialogue is happening is something to rejoice in. We also met a young monk who's studying to be a translator, who really was very excited by everything he was learning in physics about how, in an experiment, there's no pure objectivity. Once there's someone observing what's happening, everything's going to change. So for him anyway, science was validating Buddhism. So it was quite nice to see, how this was influencing the next generation of Tibetan monastics. And two, at the teachings, His Holiness spoke a lot about secular ethics, about how, in the modern world, we've relied so much on external things to make us happy and sort of given it to religion to cultivate our inner values. So if you don't have a faith or religion, you might be just completely lost. So he talked quite a lot about how if the Buddha were present in our time, he would encourage people to practice secular ethics. Just, these basic values that of kindness, compassion, love that are taught across faiths that really will serve to help us all as a big human family. So he often emphasized that. And two, to see his repeated injunction for all of us to engage in interfaith dialogue, the importance of respect between religions, especially in a time of, a lot of religious conflict. Not that I think in history there was ever a time that was free of that, but, it bears repeating that message. And two, his openness to gender issues, perhaps not radical enough for the Western mind, but at least the openness and willingness to talk about it and say that, men and women should have equal opportunities. Whether or not that can be executed, remains, within social and cultural structures. And two, his repeated emphasis on reasoning, not blind faith, that we need logic, and to keep testing out the Buddha's teachings. And in that too, I found it quite surprising when he said that maybe the traditional presentation of the Buddha Dharma might be out of date.
But that it could be reformulated. That the curriculum, the monastic curriculum, could be reformulated in a way that's more pertinent.
Right. So he called for a meeting with all the abbots and the different teachers to discuss this. We don't quite know what the outcome of that meeting is yet.
And I wouldn't actually call his reformulation within the monasteries appealing to a modern audience.
I see.
Because it's still very much within the traditional monastic education and upholding the Nalanda tradition and the way the Nalanda tradition did things. So His Holiness is not redoing all of that.
Right.
I think he's talking maybe about including more science, having science be a part of debate. And debating rebirth, but using only logic, not using scriptural quotations. Maybe something like that. It's not talking for the monasteries about a whole new redo of the
right.
System.
Yeah. So on this theme of Tibetan Buddhism and modernity, one other side project that was happening while the teachings were ongoing was Venerable's involvement in a project called Reimagining Dergyling. So it's a project spearheaded by one of her friends named Tsewang Namgyal. He's a Tibetan American, I guess now. He came to the US when he was 18 as a refugee. And again, one of these amazing stories where he worked all kinds of jobs to put himself through college and now is a vice president at Tokyo Bank and very much wants to give back to his community. And so since last year has been meeting with different people in the Mungod Dergyling settlement that's located in Mangut, talking to different community partners, also drawing all his rich resources from around the world to see how they can start creating jobs, dealing with the water issue in Mangut settlement. So of course, Venerable, who runs a monastery herself and writes 3 books, has the time to be on the advisory board and has very kindly been involved in the project, just, offering her thoughts and keeping the vision in line. I think what's been very valuable is that she's been a voice for the nuns. She's often talked about the importance of including the Tibetan nuns in the project again and again, because that easily gets forgotten in the all-male committee. And also emphasizing the need to not have a kind of victim mentality anymore, that the importance of the Tibetans just recognizing their strengths and building on them instead of always relying on outsiders for help. And that's really the spirit of this project. So I found that, I've watched it kind of develop over time and found that quite inspiring. So they had a benefit dinner where Venerable spoke and talked about how Mangut settlement can repay the kindness of everybody who's contributed to it by sharing the rich heritage of the Tibetan culture and the Buddha Dharma with the world. So yeah, that's one really virtuous project that was happening on the sidelines. And, we wish our friends all the best. It's still a big ongoing project with many challenges as development projects go. But yeah, hopefully things will come together slowly. I guess the last point I wanted to share really is something that strikes me on any teaching tour that Venerable goes on that I have the opportunity to help with. It's just to see the impact that she and the Abbey have on the world in sharing the Dharma. What comes to mind is we were in line to get registered at the police station, just waiting. And then these people from Siberia come out of nowhere and are like, Venerable Tibetan children, we love the teachings, thank you so much. They're watching these videos in Siberia, where I bet I don't know if they even have a Dharma group there, but that's the reach of our YouTube channel, that the Dharma is making an impact at all these different places of the world, and how grateful people are. So that's always a theme in every time we go for the teachings in India. People just come forward and express their gratitude. And that's something I always find very inspiring. It's just mind-boggling to be the recipient of that kindness. I guess every time I think a lot about the kindness of course, Venerable Children and all our teachers, and the Buddha who set it up this way, that as monastics we are entirely dependent on the laity for support. And then in return we have to practice well and repay that kindness. So that's very much on my mind as we enter retreat, to work hard to practice well and repay the kindness of everybody who supports us.